Hello. Today's conversation is with composer, multimedia artist, performer, concert producer, and educator, Dr. Liza Seigido. Liza is on faculty at Florida International University and at Miami International University of Art and Design. And Liza does a lot of interesting work with her company Psyche Opera, based out of Miami. They create a lot of multimedia operas and installations, and Liza has a lot of unique takes on the world of music today and COVID and what it means to be a performer and a multimedia artist. But before we get to that, please remember to leave a comment, and subscribe to my channels. And if you would like to consider supporting my content generally, please visit my Patreon page.
Welcome to Music in Mind with Anthony Caulkins.
Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Liza Seigido. She is a musician and composer and multimedia artist, and she is on faculty at two universities in Miami, right? At Florida International and Miami International University of Art and Design, right?
That's correct, yes.
Cool. So we met on an open source social media platform called Minds probably a couple weeks ago, and we sort of found each other by both posting our own artistic work. And I thought that Liza's music and attitudes about music were really interesting. So I thought it'd be fun for us to get to know each other a little bit and talk about what we do.
I look forward to it.
So how would you describe the kind of work that you're doing at the moment in terms of sort of multimedia art and how it relates to sort of the academy and music outside of the academy and all of those relationships?
Well, I quickly discovered in graduate school that academia isn't the most open place for an artist. If you don't subscribe to a certain aesthetic, to a certain school of thought, if you don't subscribe to postmodernism, you are an outcast.
Yeah.
And so I stopped composing for academia a few years ago, when I figured out that they are not an open community of artists. And so although I've learned a lot from my studies, I follow my own path in as far as composition is concerned. I care not about what my ivory tower colleagues think about my work, and that's okay, because I get awesome feedback from honest artists and honest feedback from audiences, and that's how I know that what I'm doing now is real art.
So it's interesting that you mention postmodernism and sort of its place in the academy. I remember when I was doing my master's, we had a class called Critical Studies, where we had to read all these different articles surrounding different forms of critical theory as it relates to music and a little bit of postmodernism. And I have this weird thing with postmodernism where I think that it has value. It isn't completely without value as a thing that should always be nagging in your head as an artist, that what you're doing is a fiction. And I like that. But I think that there is way too much emphasis placed on it.
I agree. I think it had its place. The movement needed to happen. However, academia lags behind.
That's definitely true.
And so I took what I needed from postmodernism, and because I was really rigid as a composer, starting as an undergrad, really, really rigid, had really, this is what music was. And if it crossed that line, it was no longer music. That's how rigid I was very, very traditional.
What were those lines, just out of curiosity?
For me, I mean, the line, it's embarrassing, but
you don't have to if you don't want to.
Well, no, I'm willing to admit that, for example, anything beyond Debussy was not music to me.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty rigid. Yeah. And so postmodernism and the philosophy of my teachers opened up my compositional palette. Mm-hmm. And I am so grateful for all of my teachers. I had really good teachers.
Yeah.
It is, but there comes to a point where I don't think it's so much the philosophy of postmodernism that is the problem, but it is the community of artists that want to continue to impose that philosophy strictly, moving forward to to composers of this generation.
Yeah.
And it's and it's alienating audiences, and they know that, and they still don't want to change. So that is the problem with it. It needed to happen.
Yeah.
But it's run its course. It's done the job that it needed to do. Now it's time for us to really compose honestly. And so that is.
Do you see your own music as being in dialogue with movements in, say, modernism and postmodernism, and then everything after that?
No, I try not to be a part of any isms of any kind.
Right, that's a good
Every
idea.
composition for me, it's its own thing. It has its own goal, and I just want to use the materials as honestly as possible, and allow the materials and if I'm working with text, for example, to allow that to guide my work in a certain direction. I let my materials guide me where they need to go.
Okay.
And so, I don't like to pigeonhole myself in any genre or any movement.
Right.
I call my most recent works electronic opera for marketing purposes, but what I do is beyond any. I don't pigeonhole myself put myself into any boxes.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, from listening to your music, I get that sense. So the electronic opera, the designation is more of a marketing designation than what you than
it's
like
so hard. It's been so hard for me to explain to audiences, layman audiences, what it is that I do, and I find that the term electronic opera gives them a more direct idea about what I'm doing, and anything that helps me to connect with an audience better, that's what I'm going to do. I'll call it whatever it needs to be called, so that people will give my music a chance, because it's not cookie cutter, factory produced music. And so you do have to invite the audience into the experience. And if you're not willing to do that, and that's part of the problem that I think the Ivory Tower has. So.
Yeah, not sort of being maybe disdainful of an audience or something like that. Yeah.
Yes. It's like, how dare you not appreciate what I do?
that's
you
true.
really do have to invite people into the experience so that they're open to it. If you're defensive about it,
Yeah.
well, you know.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny. I was just watching this old series of talks, or maybe it was just one talk, that John Mayer, the pop singer, gave at Berkeley in Boston. And it was pretty funny. I mean, he was talking about writing pop music, but he made this point that the public and or your audience is definitely smarter than you. And there's a lot of sort of young songwriters who think that they're right and that their music is good and should be heard. And
Right.
his point is like, you need to get over that.
Yes.
You're wrong.
You definitely, humility is necessary.
Yep.
If you want to reach an audience. Yes. And yeah, I spent more than 10 years in school, honing my craft, learning. And, but that doesn't mean anything
Yep.
if your work doesn't connect it.
Right. Well, I think that's part of what music is to me, is it's a connection between people. And I think for all of us musicians during these lockdowns, how that's all been dissolved is really difficult. And it makes music feel sometimes pointless or something.
It's criminal what's happening.
Yes.
We can get into politics if you want, but
We don't have to. It was a thought. It actually made me think of the opera that you sent me, that's exploring the relationship of technology and how technology is becoming more and more ubiquitous and controlling of our lives, but also necessary. And it's this very strange dialogue that we're in with increases in technological development.
Yes. And so, the opera Cyborgs Are Dancing explores that struggle, that balance. And at the end, I'm not sure that I'm done composing this opera, because I'm not sure how whether humanity will pull out of... And so it ends in a really dark place, because I have yet to decide. And as we're in this unconstitutional lockdown, I think it right now I'm going to step back and see what happens before I conclude the work. So
it's difficult because technology is so important to us as a species, and every major development, airplanes, violin bows, new types of pianos, new types of keyboards, all sorts of analog and digital technologies are sort of a piece of our development. And so this sort of like idea of cyborg futures has sort of always been there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's this very strange feeling that we're about to jump deeper into it in a way that we couldn't really previously imagine. Or maybe we already have, actually. Who knows?
We might have jumped off the deep end already in that. But I don't think that, just to clarify, I don't think that technology so much is the problem.
Right.
It is who is developing, who's managing it, all these huge monopolies that are disseminating this technology to us. We are giving so much control to so very few people.
Mm-hmm.
That is the problem. Who is the problem isn't the technology, it's who's controlling it.
Yeah.
And the future seems a little dark and grim.
Yeah. That's true. One thing I noticed that's maybe a smaller scope conversation is on a lot of your videos, you specifically address the fact that you're not using pre-recorded audio, but rather generating audio live and processing it in different ways.
Yes, one of the things that I dislike about electronic music, being an electroacoustic composer,
That's always good.
Is music, fixed playback music, concert music that is fixed playback, that defeats the purpose of composing concert music.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like to keep a performance as an interaction between performer and audience.
Uh-huh.
And once you start bringing fixed playback into live performance, it's, I don't know. I try to, one of my lights went out. I try to keep everything as real time as possible, including video.
Yeah. Yeah, video is difficult. I find when I try and make either directly reactive or, quote, interactive video, it always ends up looking like a screensaver.
That, very true. And the way that I've gotten around that is, I'm not saying don't use any fixed material. For video, sometimes it is necessary. What I like to do is create fixed video content that can then be imported into Max, and then you can use Max to process certain elements of that video in real time, so it does have a connection to what you're doing live. For example, the video that you see coming through the transparent portions of my video is a video running on a loop, but it's audio reactive. And so with video, I think, especially if your computer is not very powerful, it's a good compromise.
Yeah.
But I mean, going completely on stage and, I mean, I've been to so many conferences where you sit down and someone just presses play and then, okay, cool. Yeah, I can experience that at home. That's not a performance. And so,
there might as well just be a speaker on stage. You don't even need
exactly
the person.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, why even have this in a theater?
Do you know the listening room at Stanford at Karma that they have?
No.
It's kind of neat. So it's just one seat in the middle of a room, and they have a complete 3-dimensional speaker setup that goes above and below you, and the floor is mesh, so that the speakers can come up from beneath you as well as above you, and so you're sitting in a sphere of sound. But there can only be one person there, and the room performs it.
I mean, I love installation art and
Right.
And immersive audio experiences. That's cool. That's not a performance. I'm into producing performances. All of that is cool. And I've engaged in installation art. I love dealing with technology and building cool environments and things like that. But in as far as performance, I do have a kind of rigid idea of what should be on stage as a performance in front of an audience. What should be done.
Do you feel like the idea of a score is also fixing a performance in a way?
As long as humans are involved,
I like that. That's good.
A performance from a score is always going to be different every time.
Right.
And the audience feeds the performer feeds the audience. There's an energy exchange there. Just because they're playing something that they've memorized and fixed, whether we're conscious of it or not, there is a dialogue happening there. And so...
Yeah, that's definitely true. Have you explored any of the developments in AI creation of music or anything like that?
I've looked into it. There are a lot of my colleagues who are Max people composing a lot of algorithmic music, where a computer or a computer co-creates a piece with them.
Right.
I think that's very interesting because now you can also interact with the technology you're using to generate music. I've experimented a little bit with it, but as far as the more advanced experiments, I'm blown away by what people are doing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of scary, actually.
Well, I think it's really weird for me. So one of my best friends is a doctoral student at Georgia Tech named Richard Savory, and they're working right now on this project with a robot who just came out with an album. The robot's learning to rap, freestyle rap. The robot films scores. It can score for video games. And so its programming and its technology is just building and building to the point where it's actually making incredibly interesting music. But I think ultimately at the root, I still have a problem connecting with it because the ingenuity behind it is interesting, and there's the human element. But sure. I honestly don't care how technically skilled a machine is at playing a marimba or something like that.
Right.
And like the Nancro pieces for player piano are cool, and his composition of them is cool, but even the performance of it gets boring to me because I don't care how fast a machine can play a piano. Exactly
right. So let's keep... I'm all about keeping humans in the art, and yes, and part of the reason that I haven't explored, it doesn't interest me. I don't care about robots making music or computers. I can appreciate the people who develop the technology. They're wizards. I really can appreciate it. And their work is going to provide us with awesome new tools. But I personally am not interested in, as far as it's simple, random algorithmic things that I can do in Max so as to allow my computer to seem like it's reacting to my performances and to what I'm feeding it. That's fine. That's enough for me.
Right.
But I can appreciate it, but not really interested in seeing us go in that direction. So.
Do you see your computer as a sort of performer or a piece of your compositions and your performances, or do you? I mean, there's other ways, but I could also imagine seeing it as a tool for setting up an environment or something like that.
That's how I look at it. It is. This tool has changed the way that I create.
Right.
No doubt, but. When the piano was invented, that changed the way people created. When the violin was invented, that changed the way people... So what I'm doing is no different than what composers did in the past. This is just a new tool to create art with.
Yep. It seems like in a lot of your compositions, you really use it as a way of developing an immersive environment, especially with the visuals. What I really liked about the opera was the visuals were also projected onto the performers. And I like that. It sort of it ties this thing that can just be plastered up on the wall. It actually makes it a performing environment. And then the sounds that you're doing, and I think you had some gesture controlling, right?
Yes. Yeah. I had two webcams set out in the audience. One was capturing the performers, processing the image, and spitting it back out into the overlay. And one camera was on stage with me, pointed at the dance area. And so at certain points in the composition, webcam would turn on and capture the movements of my dancer, Bridget Cormier, incredible experimental dancer, and her movements would trigger the onset of notes in a MIDI sequence. So it was a very simple interaction, but she it just gave that extra tie-in with what she was doing. So I am experimenting more with real motion tracking in Max. So I look forward to sharing those experiments moving forward.
Yeah. Also, for anybody listening who doesn't know, Max is a very cool programming environment, sort of a visual programming environment that can, you can basically do anything like any programming language.
Anything.
But the way it's set up is really nice because you can create visual objects and connect them with patch cords so you can see the data flow really easily.
Exactly. If you're an audio person and you can really relate to Max because it's all signal flow.
Yep.
All of it. And you can build whatever you want with it. It's amazing. I love the tool.
Yeah. And Liza has some cool tutorial videos up too on YouTube. I think both on the her opera channel and her personal channel.
Yes, on my personal channel. So if you search Psyche Opera on YouTube or Liza Seigido on YouTube, you'll run into one of my channels, and I have my Max tutorials on both channels.
Yeah.
So.
You even have a tutorial on creating a podcasting platform, right?
Yes, a podcast. Well, the first episode is of that tutorial series is free. I'm going to make episodes 2 through 6 available on Brighteon for not for a subscription, but for a small tip, and then you'll be able to access it. So you with this app, you will be able to build a standalone podcasting app in Max with a cool audio visualizer that you can customize to your brand. So I look forward to releasing that soon.
So it seems like education is really important to you also.
Yes.
You're making these videos, and you're faculty at 2 colleges in Miami.
I love teaching because I love talking about what I do.
Yeah.
I can talk all day about this.
That's great. Do you consider that a piece of the practice of being a composer and musician?
Well, academia is the patron. That's how I think of it. And so it would be really hard if I didn't like to teach. But fortunately, I love being a teacher. Mm-hmm. And it's a part of me.
That's great. Yeah. Cool. I was also going to ask you, about your relationship to text. So you use text, it seems like, a lot, and you were posting about some Hildegard of Bingham, and then you had a Kyrie, and then the text for the opera is a Petrarch text, right?
Yes, it's I've been using Petrarca's Canzoniere forever for tons and tons of work. I wrote a mass, a song cycle that is a mass. That is an amalgam of the Messe Ordinary and some excerpts from Petrarca's Canzoniere. Okay. The opera is entirely taken from Petrarca's Canzoniere. So what I did was I put together the story arc for the opera, and it's like, how can I tell the story with Petrarca's words? And this man, he's a humanist poet of the Middle Ages, and very spiritual because he was also a priest. And I find that I connect with this text so much. So I piece together in his text in a way that I am telling the story of humans being subjugated by technology.
Interesting.
And I love Italian, so singing in Italian for me is, I don't know. For me, it adds that extra.
I feel like I know what you mean. I love Italian composers. Something about, I'm always drawn to Italian composers, and my favorite composers are always Italian. So
yes, yeah.
I feel like I know what you mean.
The language, the sound of the language, I like very much. So,
was it difficult to connect a text that was so old to such a seemingly modern idea, or did it fit pretty easily?
You know, he wrote so much poetry, and the Canzoniere covers many topics. It covers love, lust, politics. It covers the human experience. So it was very easy to find text that I could use to piece together to tell the story. So.
It's very cool, that idea of this lineage going back so far and being sort of prescient today with this idea. I just wrote a short paper about something that's happening in pop music that's similar, of reusing old songs as choruses for new songs, but shifting the tone and the words to suit the new song. And so I don't know if you shifted the words at all, but that idea of repurposing old material and bringing it to bear on a new idea, I think is very powerful.
You know, wisdom never expires, doesn't have an expiration date. So if you start with good, well, I don't have anything to add to that. It's like it will always be relevant. Good material will always be relevant. And so,
yeah, I agree. So then the multimedia side of your work, so bringing in dance and visuals, do you feel that it is difficult to maintain sort of compositional control over all those different areas, or do you feel like it comes naturally? Because it's something I've struggled with, where I feel like I'm a bad visual designer, and I've sort of done music, and whenever I try and go into visuals, I feel like I'm drowning or something.
I'm a very visual person, and sometimes with composition, first I see what, I can visualize what I want to see on stage. And then the music comes later.
Oh,
that
wow.
happens.
Okay.
Yes. So, yeah, I guess I'm kind of unusual that way.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's very cool. So with your opera, for instance, it had a very distinct visual setting, quality, everything about it. I mean, it's definitely in my mind. So that was something that you envisioned before you even thought about the music.
It had a look, yeah.
Okay.
And so, that is, sometimes I create a video and then score it. Like that's what film scores do.
Right.
I kind of approach composition that way.
Interesting. So do you see your music as then serving the visuals, or do you see them as more of a cohesive unit? Or something else?
I think no. I think because the music, you have to do what's natural to you, and if you try to force things into place, it's not going to work. And so, for the most part, I allow the visuals to tell me, or the text to tell me, what the music's going to do. And I don't feel like the music is subservient to the visuals, but rather it's, the composition is everything. The composition, That's why I like calling myself a multimedia artist and not so much a composer anymore, because it's Gesamtwerk. It's all one thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting idea that the visuals or the text sort of tell you what the music is going to do, as if sort of the music is there and you have to access it or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. I like to, and whenever I've tried to push out musical material without having some, even my purely acoustic compositions in the early days, I worked very much like Debussy. You need an image, and then you paint that image in the music. So even before I got into multimedia art, I always like to start with an image before getting into the music. And that's the way I allow that image or the story to structure my composition.
Yeah.
All of my effective compositions were composed that way. And whenever I try to be, I'm a composer, strictly, what is this term that's used to talk about standalone music?
Oh, like absolute music?
Absolute music.
Autodidactic or whatever?
Yeah. Whenever I've tried, those have been the worst products I've ever produced.
Oh, really?
So, yes.
Interesting.
So, I need visuals. I need images, and so, or I need to tell a story.
Right.
And so,
it's interesting that you're trying to tell a story, and then even on Minds, your posts are very expressive and courageous and forthcoming. I think that there's this interesting thing, and it's sort of a trap that I fall into. A lot of composers have it, in especially sort of the absolute music world, is you can get away with not saying anything at all. And in fact, you're trying to, and it's a great way to hide. And it's sort of the least courageous thing you could do, maybe. But I also love it. I love coming up with nerdy little systems and having they don't have anything to do with anything, in theory.
To each his own.
Yeah.
And if you got to do whatever works for you.
Right.
There's always been this thing about absolute music. It's like, well, this is a higher music because here the music is the most important thing in the composition. I threw that away a long time ago because I was...
Yeah. I think this is where... Oh, sorry.
No worries. Go ahead.
I think it's where postmodernism is actually important.
Yes.
Because to delude yourself into thinking that you can write music that actually has nothing to do with anything else is ridiculous.
Exactly right. Oh my gosh. I had... I'm not going to mention names. But I have this colleague... he composes non-referential music.
Right. Wow,
completely
that's impressive.
Yeah, he must be an alien from outer space because I mean, how you're taking from some sort of tradition whether you like it or not.
Right.
So.
Yeah, if you're using a piano, there's a tradition there. There's equal temperament. There's the history of piano music. There's no way out of it.
It boggles my mind for me to see such intelligent people make such stupid statements.
Yeah. No, I know. I get it. There's a sort of like a weird idealistic beauty in that you could have something that doesn't reference anything else, but it seems theoretical at best.
It is definitely theoretical, 100%. I mean, there is no way, even if you invented your own instrument.
Right.
I mean, we're humans. We're affected by our environment and our upbringing. There's so much that feeds into how we create things, and it's just everything has been done under the sun. You're gonna find somebody who created something very close to what you did, and that suggests that it's impossible to compose non-referential music.
Yep. And even making a new instrument, there's traditions of that. There's cultures
Yes.
of that. If
Exactly
you go to NIME every year, they have all sorts of weird new instruments.
Yep.
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 Yep, you're stuck. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. So what about Minds? I found it probably like a year ago, and I wasn't really on it much at first. And I try and go back to it because I very much like the idea of it, of an open source social media platform where sort of the source code is free and open. You can learn how it works. There's very little censorship on it.
Yeah. I ran into it a year ago, as you did, but didn't create an account until the beginning of the lockdown. I was seeing so many people getting deplatformed from the big platforms.
Right. Yep.
And I decided, no, I need a backup. And it's become more than a backup now. Now it's my primary social media.
Oh, wow.
I've dumped Facebook. And once
Facebook sucks now anyway. So.
Horrible. Yeah. It's toxic.
Yep.
Almost as I've never been on Twitter.
Oh, really?
Never. Refused. And I'm working my way off of Instagram.
Okay.
So I'm building up my mind. So I find, you hear all of these marketing gurus telling you have to be on as many platforms as you want and maintain them and create specific content for each one. And I find I tried doing that. Yeah. And it just burnt me out. It didn't grow my audience anymore. And I'm finding now, having reduced the number of platforms I'm on and just focusing on creating content for Minds, for example, I'm reaching more people, more interesting people like you. So really creative. There's so many creative, wonderfully creative people on Minds.
Yeah, definitely.
So
it's a little bit of a weird place too. I don't think it's not all wonderful. There's something about it that there's some odd people on there.
Well, that's what you get with a free speech platform. Yep. And I'm not scared of running into a Nazi or an anti-Semite You
don't have to read it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I think, the attitude that people need to take. Yep. If you don't like it, get off the channel. Block that person. Why do you have to get all, oh my God. Or it's like, oh my God, I'm on this platform where there are these kind of people. It's like, it's a free speech platform. Don't be afraid of free speech, because the moment you want to deny people free speech, it's going to be used against you.
I would also rather know how people are, what they think, because all those people exist in the world. They just don't say anything. Exactly right.
And so, I agree with that 100%. So
it's
I really like the platform.
Yeah. Yeah, I've become very interested in sort of as much honesty as possible, and like the radical honesty movement is maybe a little much, but I like the idea of it. And it's something where even if I disagree with somebody completely, if they're actually being honest about how they feel and genuine about their beliefs, I love it.
Yeah.
Even if I think their beliefs are terrible. Like there was that, I don't know if you saw it, there was a controversy with Nick Cannon where he lost his radio show because he was talking about some controversial ideas from Louis Farrakhan, about sort of anti-Semitic ideas and some anti-white ideas. But I actually didn't hate it because what he was saying was so honestly true, and I feel like you could have a conversation with somebody who has an honest belief. Right. I wasn't as mad as other people were.
We have to know who's out there.
Right.
We can't solve the problems of our society if we forbid certain speech,
Yep.
even what people consider to be hate speech.
Right.
So if we are to improve our society, we need to speak to these people.
Yep.
And we can not stigmatize people that speak to those people.
Yeah.
And so
Then it won't get better.
It won't get better. And so I'm for radical free speech all the way.
Yeah, me too. But I feel like it has to come with a cultural value of honesty. And I feel like that's a big piece that culture is lacking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God.
It's difficulty because honesty is dangerous and it's scary and it hurts people sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, gosh, there's so much to say. Where to begin on this?
Well, I like how you were talking about this earlier when you were talking about your music and being honest with your own music. And it's not postmodernist, it's not modernist. You're not subscribing to these isms,
right?
But you're trying to be honest to yourself and your own practice. Right.
Yes, perhaps this is why my music is sometimes bashed, devalued by people in academia because they don't want.
Does that happen a lot?
Yeah.
Oof.
Well, I was, to put an example, I had a good friend of mine, colleague, finished performing a piece, got great feedback from the audience, and he came up to me and was like, well, of course they're going to like it. It's so referential. And this is a different person. This is not...
It's another person?
This is another person.
People are obsessed with this referential thing. Okay.
Yes, and it's like Liza, I've also gotten the comment is, your music, you seem like you rely on having extra musical things in your performances, and doesn't that take away your focus on the composition and so.
This is a very old-fashioned idea.
Yes.
It's very confusing to me that people are still holding on to this.
Oh, academia is hardcore holding on to these things, and it's because they want true honesty. They want to be lazy.
Yeah.
They don't want to. They. I'm sure inside they sit down in the audience like, I wish I could do that. I wish I put the work into it, and you can do it. Stop banging on a can, and you can learn to do it.
Right.
And but they rather take the route that, she needs like extra musical things or she's more commercial. Yeah, I know, right? It doesn't make any sense. She's more commercial. So
you and Taylor Swift on the next big tour.
Oh yeah. So it's because they don't want to be honest with themselves.
Right.
They don't want to put the work into creating what they really want to create.
It's scary. It's dangerous. Yeah. Maybe people won't like the things that they want to create.
That's always
so
that's
they can hide behind these little systems that you can't argue with because it works.
Right, because they have the degree and
right.
I have the degree too, but
yep.
It takes more people like us with a degree to say, it's time to move on from this attitude, people. And so, honesty is not valued.
Yep.
And that's something that we need to change in our society, that we need to, as a teacher, I cultivate it with my students whenever I get a chance to get into this area.
Mm-hmm.
So
your point about the laziness is interesting. I have a friend who's a drummer who was commenting on I don't know if you saw, it was a video that was going around maybe a couple weeks ago about music theory being racist or white supremacist.
Yeah, I've run into that reading some McClary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so...
It's interesting because the video really goes hard against figured bass, and like how figured bass is they're trying to sneak in Schenkerian thought through figured bass, and so it's this sneaky way to push like Schenkerian supremacy or something like that. But the friend of mine who's a drummer was like, no, it's just lazy. They just don't want to learn how to do voice leading.
He has a point.
It's like it's easier just to say it's racist and not do it.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing, especially with the Schenker piece, because I remember my undergraduate composition professor talked to us about Schenker, and he said that Schenker was this weird, exists in this weird space, because there's some interesting things you can learn by thinking about music in a Schenkerian way. But Schenker also said that all music, like after Mahler, was not worth listening to, and even Mahler wasn't too good. And I'm like, this really weird thing where like all of the great music of the 20th century from a Schenkerian perspective is terrible. Because it all has to be mi, re, do, and do,
right.
sol, do, right?
Yep. Just so 1-4-5-1. That's all there is to it, people. And don't you dare experiment outside of that. And
right.
Don't, how about all these experiments with, Eastern tuning and
yep.
I never got in. I had to learn Schenker
mm-hmm.
to teach in graduate school. To teach it.
Right.
Never ever subscribe to it.
No?
No.
I think that the one time that it has a little bit of value is the Bach First C Major Prelude. It's like, it's a pretty good way of describing that piece, I think.
I mean...
Other than that...
it's like you trying to present how a composition was built. Certain things can be expressed most clearly with the Schenkerian graphs.
Yeah.
Cool. But I've never discovered anything that I didn't know already through traditional harmonic analysis.
Yep.
Through Schenkerian analysis. I learned nothing new from it.
Yeah.
So I don't think it reveals anything about a piece. Just a traditional harmonic analysis and formal analysis will do it for you.
Yep.
And knowing the history of the aesthetic of the time will help as well. But it's nothing to discover with Schenker.
No. Yeah, maybe not. I don't know.
That's me.
Yep.
Again, I know lots of people that is their mode that's the way they analyze everything, and they find it meaningful.
It seems funny that the way they analyze everything is they just want everything to be three blind mice.
Yes.
And the whole world has to be three blind mice.
It's also very well, those of us that study acoustics.
Mm-hmm.
And getting to tuning and learn about alternate tunings from other cultures. And then I'll also compose with noise and non-pitch things. And,
right.
and now we think of the harmonic content of the actual notes we're playing. Or
right.
creating new sounds. It's really a narrow.
Yep, extremely narrow.
Close-minded.
Mm-hmm.
It does not acknowledge. It does not acknowledge anything in acoustics, or it doesn't reveal anything about what humans prefer in as far as. What I've learned is that music what music is contextual. Once you've defined a context for composition, you can create a composition within that context, with anything. And you can, once you've defined the world for a composition, everything that fits into that world is music. And so, man, I heard someone, a big composer. I went to a conference in early 2019, Opera America conference. Big speaker, big composer. You know what? I'm not going to say anymore because
no,
the composer is so big, people will know who it is. And so I don't want to be bashing.
Oh no, that was so exciting.
Oh my God. Okay, I guess
You don't have to. No. I mean, I don't want to be encouraging you to do something you shouldn't do. But
well, I don't want to make people my, anyone in your prospective audience my enemy because I bashed their favorite composer. But they probably already know who it is. Because I mentioned Opera America 2019, and they'll know who it is. Anyways. Very traditional concepts of what music is and how music should be structured, and the spewing only only music created with traditional progressions of the common practice period are worth their, can be called music. And I'm like, really?
It's ridiculous.
Really? You think that? Wow.
It's such a narrow way of thinking. Like that little dot on that page, all those little black note heads, those have anything to do with anything. Like that's such a specific way of thinking about things. Music can be anything. It's just in your head. Yeah. That's the other thing is that I love to think about. It's not real. You're making it.
Interesting.
So this is why, like my undergrad composition professor would he'd have these seminars, and inevitably somebody would ask something about like what is music, like trying to ask some deep question. Right. And he would always say like, oh, that's a stupid question. That's maybe fun over beers, but like. It's anything. Anything that you think is music is music. There's your answer.
I feel like if you create it and you connect with it, what was music called in ancient Greece? In ancient Greece, music meant of the muses.
Right.
And anything that falls into, that touches upon the disciplines of the muses is music.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It can be anything. It can be anything. Yeah. So long as, but I find that if, as the creator, as the composer, if you compose honestly and put yourself into it and are not thinking about what your colleagues are going to think about your work, you will create music that connects with other people. Mm-hmm. And so.
Cool. That's a beautiful sentiment to end up on, I think.
Beans.
Yeah, that was awesome. Do you have a way to play a little bit? We can try and do a little improvisation before we finish up.
Absolutely. I have my improv gear in front of me right now.
Okay.
My little chaos pad, my hello.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
A harmonizer, and so I'm ready to go.
All right. I thought it'd be fun. I've been practicing banjo a lot lately.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we'll see. I've been practicing my claw hammer for a taping I have coming up next week. So
very cool.
Sorts of fun stuff with it. Yeah.
I've never improved with a banjo player before.
Oh, really?
This is a first for me. Never.
Oh, cool. I love it because the drum makes the strings ring, so you can do all sorts of cool tuning stuff.
Awesome. Oh, that's going to be cool. Going to be cool.
All right. So we can start whenever. Yeah.
All right.
So let's get on the for something. Let me see.
cool. Well, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you.
It was nice to meet you and learn about you.
Awesome. And I look forward to getting to know your music more too, and future collaboration certainly in our future. So
yeah, definitely. All right.
Cool.
Well,
alrighty.
have a good weekend.
You too, Chaito.
Thanks for listening or watching. Please remember to check out Dr. Liza Seigido and Psyche Opera, her multimedia opera company based out of Miami. And please remember to leave a comment, and subscribe to my channels. And if you would like to consider supporting my content generally, please visit my Patreon page. Thanks. Bye.